Yoimiya has had quite the adventure from the meta perspective. She was ridiculed and hated when she was first released, and to be honest, I got her by accident while pulling for Sayu on the original banner. I was reluctant to raise her for quite a while because of the bad stigma that the community gave about her. Despite her having an amazing design and unique playstyle, she was underwhelming on release. That was merely because people didn't understand just how powerful our fireworks expert is. What's up guys, Enigma Av here. Before we get started, if you think that Yoimiya is the cutest pyro girl in Genshin Impact, then hit that subscribe button and like this video. Now then, Yoimiya is a unique character. Most characters rely on a combination of their burst and skill to do their damage. However, 80% of Yoimiya's damage comes from her E skill alone, and it's almost ready always thanks to proper team rotations. Despite that, her burst is still a part of her kit. It really functions as a buff for your team members, and it's best to be used before her skill with most of her sets, and after her skill with the Shiminawa set. Yoimiya's personal damage isn't that great when compared to other hybrid carries such as maybe Zhao or Eula or Ito. However, with the right setup, it can skyrocket. She still does decent damage on her own, but with the right teammates, she really will thrive. While a lot of people swear that Yoimiya needs a shield, she actually performs well without it. You just have to be a lot more careful. If you aren't good at managing your dodges, then I definitely advise a shield, but even without it, her damage output can be pretty great. Another option for a shield is actually C4 Yanfei. Not only can she hold the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer, but she can also hold the prototype Amber. In addition, all you have to do is build her with energy recharge, some HP, and she'll be an amazing shield for Yoimiya. Yoimiya's talent priority is her normal attack, then her skill, then her burst. The only skill worth crowning here is her normal attack. However, you can still crown her skill if you are a true hard Yoimiya main. But it's definitely not advised as it's a very small boost past level 8. As for her burst, you can leave it at level 6 to be honest. The buff it provides is static despite its levels. As for her passive talents, they're actually pretty good. Her A1 passive allows her to get a decent pyro damage boost based on the number of shots she does during her normal attack window. Her A4 passive increases your team's damage by a minimum of 10% when her burst is active for 15 seconds. You can have 100% uptime with this ability with proper rotations. With Shiminawa, however, this buff will be a little better because it's buffed with stacks from her A1 passive. However, you will have much less uptime on her burst. Yoimiya has many artifact sets, which is great. They are also very similar in power and have pros and cons across the board. My favorite set to use on her, however, is 4-piece Echoes of Offering set. It allows her to have no restrictions on her burst. The damage is pretty good. If you're using Yunjin, however, because of how the buff works, you'll most likely want a little more consistent damage with 4-piece Shiminawa or 4-piece Crimson Witch. The Echoes of an Offering set is still great overall, despite whatever team that you're using. It's just more RNG based maybe. As for raw damage, Shiminawa is a little better, but you won't have full access to her burst. With Crimson Witch, however, you can take the best of both worlds, consistent damage and having access to her burst. In case you're struggling to come across the correct artifact sets with Yoimiya, you can use any 2-piece sets in combination with one of the others for decent results. She does do quite well with a 4-piece set effect, but if artifacts are not good, then you're better off using 2-piece sets. Now, despite me saying that the Echoes of Offering doesn't offer consistent damage, it's still pretty consistent across the board. You'll just won't see that huge Vape number every now and then, but when you do see it, it's big. Also, the 4-piece Bowlight set can actually work very well on Yoimiya. It just limits her team options heavily and only works with that particular team. You'll essentially have to tie John Lee to Yoimiya to use this set. The artifact domain isn't the best either, so I wouldn't advise using it as the damage is still quite comparable to the other sets. Yoimiya has many weapon options, both 4-star and 5-star. For 4-star weapons, the uncontested winner is the Rust. An R5 Rust does better than most R1 5-star weapons, with the exception of Thundering Pulse. Rust is one of the best 4-star weapons for normal attacking bow characters. She can also use the Inazuma craftable, Hamayumi, and Black Cliff Warbow. Viridescent Hunt is also a decent option, but you really want to prioritize using Rust on her. As for 5-star weapons, she can use every one of them besides Elegy at the end. Of course, the Thundering Pulse is her best in slot, and the other 5-star bows perform very similarly. Yoimiya seemed very restrictive in team comps when she was first released, but she actually has many options now that more characters have been released. Yoimiya is the character that really needs her teammates to perform well. There are a few main teams that can be ran with Yoimiya: Vape, Overload, and Overvape, as well as adding Geo-Resonance into any of these teams. For Vape, you'll want to pair Yoimiya with either Yelan or Xingqiu, or even use both if you want. This team does amazing single target DPS, but will leave little to be desired in the area of effect situations. Unless you pair them with Zhongli and Albedo, then you'll get some area of effect, and you'll also get Geo-Resonance, and that can have a lot of mileage in multi-target situations. For Overload teams, my favorite team is Yoimiya, Beidou, Fischl, and Bennett. There are many variations, however. I find that Beidou's shield is enough to get by with if you have her C2. However, you can't swap in Zhongli in any place here, but you might not want to use Beidou unless you have another battery like Fischl with you. For Overvape teams, you'll either use Yelan and Xingqiu alongside Fischl or Beidou. You'll prioritize Fischl here because Beidou's burst is difficult to charge by yourself. Bennett is a must here because he will boost both Yoimiya and your Electro support's damage. The team does quite well against bosses especially, and can do decent in area of effect situations thanks to Overload and the damage from your Electro supports. You can throw in Kazuha, Sucrose, Venti, or John Lee anywhere here, to be honest. Kazuha can boost Yoimiya's damage to insane levels if used correctly. You'll always want to double Swirl with Kazuha to buff both Yoimiya and her supports. For Yoimiya, you have a few options for her rotation, and both seem to work fine. If you're using the Shiminawa set, however, it's going to be completely different. For all other sets, you'll want to either start with a burst, cycle through your character's skills and burst before landing back on Yoimiya and using her normal attacks. If she has enough energy recharge, by the time she's done, she can activate her burst again and repeat the process. This is probably most advised as it saves a little time to utilize her team's burst. The 1 to 2 seconds to cast her burst is actually significant in this situation. In addition, she can immediately begin regaining energy for her next burst. But if you're smooth brain like me sometimes, you can just use your character's skill, then lead in with Yoimiya's burst and then activate her skill. Either is fine, but the first method is really more advised. For the Shiminawa set, however, you really can't do this. You're going to have to use her burst at the end of her skill cycle, and her burst won't come up as often. So you'll really just use all your character's skills, then go to Yoimiya, use her elemental skill, do her normal attacks, activate her burst, and repeat the process. You may get her burst every other rotation, but it's still pretty decent from the massive buff from Shiminawa. However, for you Kazuha havers, I'd advise you actually do this rotation with Vape Yoimiya especially. You'll want to lead with Bennett's burst and skill, and then you'll want to follow with either Yelan or Xingqiu's burst and skill. Then you'll want to do Kazuha's hold E. That's very important here because the first hit will swirl Hydro off of the enemy, getting the buff, while the second, which is the plunge, will actually swirl Pyro on the enemy. And this will result in a double swirl, increasing both Yoimiya and her support's damage. Yoimiya is a very fun unit, and despite all of her issues, she's actually still quite powerful. I am so thankful to have accidentally pulled her, and she's been getting buffs in the form of her supports. She still has many flaws, but with the right team, you can supplement those flaws. For the pros for Yoimiya, she is one of the best single target characters in the game, so against bosses, she's always going to do well. She's a great driver for many teams thanks to her pyro infusion and her DPS window. She has no downtime issues whatsoever thanks to not relying on her elemental burst. Her auto aim can be very great in overall combat because you could just stand still and click and shoot. As for the cons, however, as I said that she's great in overall combat, little small tidbits actually really stand out that are annoying, such as her arrows being blocked by objects or her arrows hitting water instead of what's in the water, for instance. In area of effect situations, she is doing next to no damage when compared to area of effect of characters such as Zhao. For the Fireworks Queen, she has literally 0 AoE. Yoimiya's personal damage isn't quite the best, but she can still manage on her own, and she really relies on your supports being well built unless you're using pure Vape. Her charge attacks are really cool, but they're absolutely useless unless you're sniping birds. If you enjoyed this comprehensive guide, please hit that like and subscribe for more informative and entertaining Genshin Impact content. Thank you for watching this video and continuing to support my work. Until next time, Enigma out.